Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, how do you handle a situation where your child is subject to narcissistic parenting? What do you do if, quote unquote, the other half, your better half, is a narcissist? They are controlling. Even as a parent, everything is all about them, their needs, their schedule, their wants, their level, and nothing is really there with consideration or emotional intelligence for the child. This can be a very sad and sorry state of affairs when a child is raised by a narcissist parent. It's very confusing. The child development, the psychological development of a child, is not fully matured enough to utilize reasoning, logic, guidance of their emotions or emotional mastery, or even their perception of the world, other people, themselves, is not fully formed. As a child, children are extremely impressionable. They are like a sponge. They are like a thirsty sponge, and they will take up and absorb whatever is in their environment. Yet children are also highly attuned. They're very well aware, especially those children, I feel, who are born, who had birth dates in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Moving forward, there's this sort of, philosophy of the indigo child, the rainbows, the crystals, the children who were born with, empathy, ESP, these sort of heightened states of awareness that are able to take the helm and guide the world, that are very sensitive to others. They're able to, even kind of get into this parenting situation where they're really sort of more sensitive and tuned than the parents. And so they'll be the leaders of the family. Even if they're, 5, 6, 7, they'll be sensitive. They'll be wanting people to be getting along. They'll be like the peacemaker. They're very perceptive of how either people, are self-sabotaging or dysfunctional. They'll notice people's communication patterns, sleep patterns, eat patterns, relating patterns as well, tone of voice. They're very, very perceptive. And, even just for a child, for example, even before they have, communication where they can have, external communication, expressive communication, they still have receptive comprehension. Meaning you can tell a child, put your shoes on even before, and they'll do it even before they can understand the word shoes. So children are very receptive and impressionable, and they need a lot of guidance, especially through, ages 0 through 7, 7 through 13, 14 through 21. I mean, there are kind of some developmental stages and spurts that they encounter all along the way. Number one, in the beginning, especially if you read John Bradshaw's book, Homecoming, Reclaiming and Championing the Inner Child. It's a very great book, and it talks about especially the relevance of parenting styles on children and how they can either develop on the, basically successfully cross that stage and accomplish that stage and move on to the next stage, or if they get sort of stuck at certain developmental ages. Freud talks about this also. Anal retentive versus anal retentive versus anal expressive. There's all these different sort of creations, but the child does come in with some predispositions which make it so. And so this is a great viewer question because, really a child, once again, is so impressionable, and they will take on what is in their environment, and they will automatically attribute themselves as the cause. In other words, if people are fighting, it must be because of me. If people are not present or not talking to me, it must be because of me. I'm not worth communicating with. I'm not worth having eye contact. I'm not worth receiving a smile. I mean, these are the things that children need. Eye contact, a smile, warmth, guidance, communication. They need to know They need to pick up the rhythm of language, their vocabulary, how to learn about the world. What are what are things called? And especially what about people in the world, particularly their closest world, their family unit. And a child has caregivers, their mother and their father. These are the caregivers. These are the child developers. They are the ones who are responsible and are saddled with the task of guiding this child successfully through the stages. That is their quote unquote responsibility. That is their quote unquote job. They can either succeed or fail miserably. I mean, there's just a full spectrum. Some parents are more well aware, some are not aware, some are emotionally intelligent, some are not, some educate themselves about how to parent, some do not educate themselves, and the result then becomes a product of where the parent is in this spectrum of ability. And a child, once again, they will perceive and take on. This is just the natural way of human beings. A child will assimilate and pick up. Assimilate meaning sort of build onto their existing language, their existing learning ability. They will assimilate, which means they'll add on and grow accumulatively. In other words, you're such a bad boy. They'll remember that tone and that phrase. And then why don't you go get the milk? And then why don't you eat your dinner? I mean, all of the tone then becomes compartmentalized, and there's this assimilation process where a child will remember reflections of itself as mirrored back by their parents. So, and what the parent not only tells to the child, they will internalize, but they will also assimilate. So they'll pick up and then sort of add on and build on to these statements and perception of themselves, particularly as it relates to commands that are given to them. Tone, body language is most important. Tonality is second most important. And then the spoken word is the last most important. The body language accounts for, some people say, 75 to 80% of communication. And then tonality is like 20 to 25%. And then the spoken word or the written word is a very small percentage. So as you can understand, body language as well as tonality, especially what a children is highly perceptive to, and then still learning the language and learning the momentum, learning the rhythm, the cadence, the tone that they are picking up from their children, from their parents rather. So if their parents are narcissistic and view children only as an extension of themselves, essentially, meaning that if the child does well, you get a good grade, you look beautiful, you look handsome, you're well behaved, you're this, that, or the other things, sort of these preconceived qualifications that the narcissist parent needs. If you're that, you might get, some love and attention. But if you're too needy, if you're a child, if you go wah, if you cry, if you ask a question, the narcissist parent doesn't want to really deal with that. Everything is an extension of themselves. And so parents who are narcissistic also have this sort of, feeling of accomplishment through their children. So if their children grow and then develop and then get certain accomplishments, they'll have narcissistic supply or feel that they have accomplished these things because it's their parent, because it's their child. Sorry. So they'll take, credit for their child, but they will not take responsibility if their child needs coaching, parenting, discussing, answering their questions, help with their homework, time, go to the doctor, sit and be with them. Oftentimes the narcissistic parent is too pathologically self-absorbed to notice or to care or to understand what their true responsibility is. So they can have a very limited feeling of responsibility towards their child. And unless their child sort of grows up to fit their narcissistic needs, the child will either be close or far away. And also what I would say very importantly is the child then experiences this confusion of hot and cold with the parent. Hot meaning warmth, caring, what the child truly needs, and then this cold. don't talk to me. I don't have time for you. I'm not going to give you eye contact. I'm not going to give you a smile. I'm not going to ask you how your day was. I'm not going to help you with your homework. I'm too preoccupied with my toothache, with my footache, with my backache. The parent, in other words, if they're too involved with their life, that they don't have time to be a parent. They're always working. They're never there. When they come home, they're tired. They're in a bad mood. They're throwing the groceries on the table. Help me put this away. No, hi, how are you? No getting down to the child level. So there, I want you to understand sort of the gap in how narcissistic parenting can hurt before we look at sort of what to do and how to handle it. And there could be so much more content on this. And then the child is perceptive of this, and it must be, when the parent comes home and is, not attentive to them, inattentive. In other words, they're still in the room, but they're not present. They're not available. The parent is either agonizing over their day. They're complaining about having to carry in the groceries. They're talking about the family finances. They're yelling at the spouse. There's this negative environment, this negative culture, this negative vibe that the child is absorbing once again like a thirsty sponge. The child doesn't know the difference really between what they cause and what's caused by the world or their parent situation. So they tend to think it must be me, and then what can I do to help ease the situation, ease the tension, ease the pain. Hence the development in the beginning of codependency, people pleasing, beginning to develop a false self, be able, a separating and a divide from satisfying their needs, foregoing these, sacrificing these to satisfy the needs of the parent or the dysfunction of the parents. There can be a lot of dysfunction and disconnect. But the child then has to develop this sort of hyper-vigilance or hyper-external awareness, this sensitivity where they're always absorbing and calculating and attending to what is going on in their environment. And what can I do to either dodge the anger or alleviate the anger, or maybe, then when they, are in their room, they feel extremely isolated. The feng shui of their life is totally off. They might be a quiet person, have a quiet nature, and everything is loud and aggressive in their home. They might not have a good window to look out of. They might feel blacked in their room. Their room might be, a negative color. They might not have their parents visit them in their room and talk to them and give them eye contact and smiles and just general positive parenting. Okay, oftentimes children are extremely neglected, emotionally neglected, physically neglected. I mean, there's so much to this. However, when we look at the context of the narcissist, it's to understand, and then how do you help the child who is dealing with this, who doesn't understand a separation of boundaries? In other words, the parent is angry, and what about my feelings? The child usually is going to mimic and imprint on the parent. So if you've ever seen like a duck in baby ducks, it can be the cutest thing. You see like the mom duck walking or the mom goose, and they've got like 7 or 8 ducks walking behind them all in a row. They're like teeny tiny, or you see the ducks that, they're on instinct. They're imprinting on the parent. This is a psychological term for picking up their mannerisms, their behavior. So there's imprinting going on. So the child, that's their truth through ages 0 through 7. So they're going to be imprinting the parents. But as they get older, they're going to say, you know what, I go to school, children are smiling and laughing and playing and getting together. This is completely different, than what I experience at home. And then they might go home and they might be in their room, and once again, the feng shui, the energy of the room is off. There might not be windows open, to a sunlight. They might be in a dark room. They might be, right up against their parents or their siblings where it's always loud and they're never invited to communicate. There can be this, violation of personal space. People come barging in their room, yelling, throwing things. There's no sense of boundaries or standards. So a child, oftentimes does not have the guidance. And number one that they need to learn is sort of a guidance of their emotions. Like when you feel sad, it's okay. We can listen to you. You get a hug, a kiss. We'll talk about it. We'll, work through it, and then you can go on with your day. There's the guidance and shaping of emotions. Children need to know how to get structure, discipline, and temper themselves. They cry. That's their form of communication. If the parents is like scolding them for this is a natural behavior. And so the child then learns to be scolded for something that is natural and built in, and because of lack of, emotional intelligence on the parent. Maybe the parent doesn't know how to handle, multiple children, and they're narcissistic. They're too caught up in their feelings, their needs. Do this for me. Children are put to work in the house. Why don't you rake the leaves? You're age 5. Why don't you, cut the carrots, cut the potatoes? And the kid can barely, reach up that high. They can barely handle an adult-sized rake or an adult, vacuum. They're injuring themselves just to perform these activities for the parent. So it can be very, very sad and very distressful. And so, one thing that you can, to teach a child is about human behavior and about people's emotions and people's characteristics and people's personality types. It can be a great time to educate them about different personality types in the world. There are people who are very, who have an angry tone. You can educate them about different personality types, different emotions. What does it look like? Educating them that some adults are very preoccupied with their work, that they have this as part of their personality type. And you can kind of compare them to like the animal kingdom and put it on a child's level so it becomes easily assimilated or comprehended, so they can make sense of them. They can make sense of things and then see where they are in the world. So they need to see that their own individual separate person with separate distinct emotions, feelings, values, strengths, and talents, and that's what's important. That they learn to then be nurtured and receive nurturing, and to be able to consistently rely on consistent parenting and repetition and experience, a creation of routine for children. Children need structure. They need regularity. They need consistency. They need to have some certainty. When there's chaos, uncertainty, these sort of, constantly there's this, a wrench thrown in things. People are upset. There's chaos, emotional chaos. This breeds insecurity in a child because there's no security, consistency given. You're okay. Your home is okay. Your meals are going to be, communicated to. So you're going to learn about your food or whatever it is, how the parents, what they're going to give to the child. Teach them hands-on how to cook, how to bake, how to set up your desk, how to study, how to get the right reading light. All these different things that show that the parent is present. Oftentimes a narcissistic parent will not be there in these ways. So it's very important to educate the child about what is going on, the cause that creates the effect, especially when it comes to understanding the narcissistic parent. And you don't use the word narcissistic and don't, throw them under the bus. Just explain them in the general universal terms. This person has their mind on, what's so important to them, what they're always thinking about. However, and then you need to kind of separate them from this narcissistic parent and tell them and give them focus on what's important for them and understand what they need and get to know them. Do you like it when it's quiet? Do you like it when there's music? Do you like it when, you do this in the morning or the afternoon? Getting to know their preference, letting them know, the child know that they can be the center of attention in a healthy, balanced manner. Learning and educating them about different personality types and human behavior is crucial. So, once again, giving them explanations about this person and that they're not mad at you, they're mad at themselves or the work that they're doing. It's not, that they don't love you, they're too busy. And this is what love is. This is what attention